Montana started a scholarship program that allowed people to keep more of their own money, which could then be used to support scholarships for kids to attend the school of their own choice. In fact, some families, I think there was a single mom, a beautiful family, with beautiful young girls, single mom, beautiful family, and I think their family goes to, I think Stillwater Christian is the school in Kalispell that their family chose, that it was just the right fit for them and their family. So that's what they chose, right? Well, the teachers union and the left freaked out, claiming that this amounted to the government funding private and religious schools. It's, of course, an absolutely absurd claim by the left that simply allowing people to keep more of their own money amounts to a state appropriation. But yet you'll see a guest opinion column in the Great Falls Tribune today by the head of the teachers union here in Montana, Eric Fever, attacking this and attacking Montanans' ability to simply use a little bit of their own money to support a scholarship program. Really just absurd that something like this had to make it all the way to the Supreme Court, but it is there. Here to chat about that story with us, Brent Mead with the Montana Policy Institute. Hey, Brent, great to have you this morning.
Hey, good morning, Aaron. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Man, a lot of stuff we could talk about with you this morning here, from impeachment to the gun rights rally in Virginia and everything else. But first, what about this big case at the U.S. Supreme Court?
I mean, I think you hit on the problem in Montana, that what the Montana Supreme Court did really was, it's illogical. That this idea that the government owns all money that is not taxed, and that's why you can't choose to use some of that money to send a child to a school of the parent's choice. It's a ridiculous decision. But what's at issue right now in D.C., because the state chose to do that, because our Supreme Court chose to do that, the U.S. Supreme Court is going to decide whether Montana and the 37 other states that have language like Montana, saying you cannot provide aid to sectarian institutions, whether that violates the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause of the Constitution. This is, this is easily the biggest school choice case before the U.S. Supreme Court in 25 years, if not ever. What Institute for Justice, who represented Kendra Espinosa, what they're doing is incredible. If they're successful today, we are talking about that for the first time ever, the way will be completely clear. All of these arguments that the teachers union has thrown up for decades, all of those arguments will be broken down, and we can finally start to put in place policies that simply allow parents like Miss Espinosa, where one of her daughters was bullied at public school for reading the Bible during recess.
Yeah, interesting.
Parents like her are able to put their kid in an environment that helps them.
Well, we're going to talk about the policy of all of this, and then we're going to talk about the politics of all this, too, because unfortunately it all goes together. Brent Mead with the Montana Policy Institute here to break it down for us. So let's start with the policy, Brent. First off, what happens if Espinosa actually wins this case? Because it sounds like there's a whole bunch of national groups that are weighing in, both pro and con, with regard to this case.
Yeah. Initially, what will happen in Montana is this tax credit will be restored. It's a small tax credit. It's $150 per filer. It's not large, but if Espinosa wins, that tax credit program goes back in place. Long term, what it will do is it will kind of sign off on programs like Montana's and programs like Arizona, which allow for expansive tax credit programs to scholarship organizations, and those organizations then give scholarships to individual students. That's a scheme that's kind of in play here. What's not being asked for is, a direct $1 million appropriation from the state of Montana to Stillwater Christian.
Yeah, I mean it's not like Butte Central Catholic and Billings Central Catholic and Stillwater Christian and Billings Christian are going to the state legislature at the appropriations committee and asking for line item appropriations for funding for their school. They're not asking to be a part of the big budget bill. This just simply allows individual Montanans to keep more of their own money and then to donate it to a scholarship program.
Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately, before the Montana decision, to be honest, I didn't even think this was necessary because we allow, for example, you can donate to the Billings Central, their foundation, and their foundation will give scholarships to students attending Billings Central. And that donation is charitable and tax deductible. So, to be honest, one of the other reasons I was blindsided by the Montana Supreme Court decision was this structure has existed for many years. But a good decision today from the U.S. Supreme Court will simply kind of give a stamp of approval to programs like Montana's. And that does have a huge impact because as soon as you start doing this across the country, then you can iterate, reform them, and make sure that they are as effective as possible and that they're helping the families that we want to help.
Well, and of course, the teacher union and public employee union folks, I wish they were this a Twitter about Colstrip and the labor union jobs in Colstrip as they are about, taking a fight against a mom and her two little girls that just want to go to the school of their own choice. I mean, if the public employee union folks in Helena were as excited about coal mining jobs as they were about this little case here, imagine how much more progress we'd see when it comes to natural resource policy in this state. But
I mean, not all tax dollars are equal. Apparently, that the union is. I mean, they're fighting tooth and nail to keep a monopoly. That they don't want any door open for school choice. But then, as you say, when it comes to property tax bases like Colstrip, there's crickets occasionally.
Well, and to me, I just don't get why they're so afraid here because look, there's several options in the larger cities here in Montana, larger towns. I don't know if we call any of them really cities here, but it's like I've got friends who, put their kids in public school, but then for whatever reason they just said, they said, well, their son just liked it better at the Christian school. So it works better for their kid. Now, my kids love, especially the middle school. Man, they get to choose their lunch options. They love all the different classes. So public school is best for them. I just don't see what, they act like just because people have the choice that they're not going to choose public school here. To me, it's so absurd.
Yeah, I mean, one of my parents was a public school teacher. I went to public schools. It worked for me. But what these school choice programs are designed for are that 15% of Montana students who aren't graduating. And for some of those students, it's related to the environment that they're in. That if you can have them in a different environment that's more comfortable for them, that provides them the classes they want to take, that maybe they will stay in and graduate. And that's a good thing for the state of Montana generally. That's
a good point. That I think where some of these left-wing activists, they're putting this fear campaign out there among teachers, public school teachers and others that, well, if we give kids school choice, now this kid is going to stop going to your class and he's going to go to this class over here. Whereas in reality, you point out, what about all of those kids who aren't graduating, who are dropping out altogether? This gives those kids, these are kids that are not going to be in the classroom, that are given this option that keeps them in the classroom. So that's a great point that you make. So we've talked a little bit about the policy of all this. Let's talk about the politics of all this, because it's quite interesting. State Senator Lou Jones, Conrad, Montana, he's considered one of the more moderate Republicans, kind of the leader of the moderate, kind of the brains behind the moderate Republicans caucus here in Montana. He actually shepherded this legislation, spearheaded it. it passes both houses in the Montana legislature, gets to Governor Steve Bullock's desk. And, apparently Governor Steve Bullock didn't have the courage to outright veto the bill, so it ended up becoming law. Or maybe he just didn't want to, anger Lou Jones, because Lou Jones is kind of the deal maker back in Helena. But either way, Bullock didn't have the courage to veto the bill, so it becomes law anyway. But yet Bullock has very intently tried to undermine this law the entire time.
Yeah, that is the history. When Lou Jones sponsored this legislation, I remember in the hearing, he made a very clear and direct point that he's bringing this forward to settle this fight. What can we do? What can't we do when it comes to school choice? So that's why this program started so small. It included a tax credit if you want to donate to your local public school. That there are two sides to this tax credit program. There's a school choice side and a public school side. When it got to the governor's desk, I know why Governor Bullock let it become law. That's part of the deal-making process in Helena. But then when he immediately turned around and undermined it with Department of Revenue writing in rules that went against the clear intent of the legislature, that's what a veto's for. We have a process in place. The system doesn't work if the governor chooses not to use the tools that he has, the veto, and then rewrites legislation that's been passed become law at will. That's not how it works. That's not how. That's just a core violation of the separation of powers.
Well, and I see where he was coming from there. He could allow it to become law, and then he could just kick it over to the liberal Montana Supreme Court, because they're by and large in the back pocket of the Democrat Party. They've been mostly a partisan court. So hey, they're in the back pocket of FEVER, the teachers unions, and the Democrat Party. So the Supreme Court can just find some stupid excuse to kick it out. But of course, and that's why it had to go all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. But it's just unfortunate that all this time has to be wasted fighting an issue that's a non-issue, frankly.
Yeah, hopefully the good news is that after all of this turmoil, that we will get some clarity. Because it's been funny to see some of the groups on the left and the teachers' unions for sure. There's this case out of Missouri, Trinity Lutheran, that Missouri wouldn't let a religious church take state money to pave a playground. They could see the writing on the wall that, well, if churches can take money to pave a playground, that now everything is in play. So you can kind of see how they've wanted to fight this tooth and nail and make the process as long and drawn out as possible. But the U.S. Supreme Court will provide clarity. And it's almost certainly going to be that so long as, like what Montana did, it's a neutral program towards religion. It's just saying parents can send their kid to a school of their choice, donors can donate to a group of their choice, and the state has no role in directing that money, then there is no entanglement with religion here.
Yeah, exactly.
Parents, Well, it's parents and private groups making a decision.
It's getting a lot of national attention. I saw the Daily Signal, which is a product of the Heritage Foundation. They've got a write-up, What You Need to Know About the Religious School Case at the Supreme Court. In fact, it's actually a whole podcast interview they did on it. Brent Mead with the Montana Policy Institute. Always a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us and giving us your insight this morning.
Hey, thank you, Aaron.